Hello. For Chin and Kramer, nursing effectiveness is guided by the five ways of knowing, which are empirics, ethics, aesthetics, personal, and emancipatory. And it takes all five ways of these to be an effective nurse. Chin and Kramer also note that knowing in nursing is expressed and communicated properly when all patterns of knowing are valued. But often, one of the ways of knowing takes over and guides the nurse in his or her actions. And when this happens, when one pattern is not integrated within the whole of knowing, per Chin and Kramer, distortion rather than understanding occurs. While the experience I'm about to share is not extremely impacting or moving, it is something I hope to change in my approach to patient care when I'm a nurse practitioner. So I was observing at a clinic recently, and a 50-year-old patient came in with a newly diagnosed hyperlipidemia. Her LDL was 130, so that put her on the low end of borderline high. She reported that she was moderately active but was willing to increase her activity level. Further, her diet was fair, and she admitted to eating more fried chicken than she should, but she did say that she had been ordering more salads recently when she went to fast food restaurants, so she was trying to make changes. She did express a desire to change her nutrition. She also had questions about incorporating krill oil and perhaps turmeric to aid in lowering her LDL because had read about it in a paper. The provider seeing the patient this day had an agenda: get her on a statin drug, plain and simple. He liked to see the numbers change based on medication. And while he believed in lifestyle modifications, he really wanted his patients to have pharmacological interventions, even at the borderline level. So the Mediterranean diet and ideas for walking were discussed with her, but for the provider it was not enough. There was little attention paid to the questions regarding fish oil or turmeric, but there was a heavy push to prescribing a statin drug. So I watched as the patient emphasized that she really did not want to do this. Her hesitancy, although, was not as strong as his insistency. Per Chin and Kramer, empirical knowing is expressed as scientific competence by means of competent action that's grounded in empiric knowledge. So I believe that empirics took over in this situation as yes, there is legitimate scientific evidence to back up the prescribing of a statin for an LDL of 130. In combination with empirical knowing driving this interaction was the lack of personal knowing. Per Chin and Kramer, personal knowing requires authenticity, and authenticity requires questioning, acknowledging, and understanding things such as your own personal biases. So I believe a personal bias of wanting to treat a patient from a strictly medical perspective occurred in this scenario. As providers, we're to listen to our patients, we're to view them holistically, and if a patient is expressing a strong desire to change her lifestyle, interest in other therapies, and a fear of a particular medication, then we are to assist that patient in an informed decision-making strategy. We're supposed to do shared decision-making with them. This leads me into question number 2, and being that I've already pulled empiric knowledge into the picture, I'll break it down a little more here. Empiric knowledge per Chin and Kramer makes use of conscious problem solving, logical reasoning, and provides scientific evidence for our actions that we do as healthcare providers. As a future nurse practitioner, I plan to utilize the strength of empiric knowing in planning and caring for my patients based on evidence. Having the skill of empiric knowledge will allow me to practice from an educated scientific framework. While approaching nursing practice empirically is so very important, it can be cause for limitations as well. If it becomes the predominating way of knowing in a practice, we lose our ability to practice holistic care. And nursing is about seeing the patient holistically. We aim to care for not just their medical needs, but their emotional, their physical, their emotional, their psychological, their sometimes spiritual. And in my case, while I work at the free clinic, we're working with cultural issues and financial issues, and the list could go on and on when you're thinking in terms of looking at the whole holistic view of the patient. On the other hand, if you don't have the component of empirics in your way of knowing, Chin and Kramer describe how control and manipulation will play a part in your framework. And they do call it a distortion, as I noted earlier. A distortion is a clouded view. So if a nurse practitioner or a nurse if as a nurse practitioner or a nurse I allow my views to be cloudy or distorted or lacking in empirics, then my patients will suffer. It's a recipe for not only errors to be made, but for care to be compromised. Overall, it's evident that incorporating all of the ways of knowing will allow me to function effectively, holistically, and provide the best care for my patients. Thanks.